Right now, you can get 10% off retail orders of comic supplies from bcwsupplies.com when you use the promo code ScottyD at checkout.
And there's no space between Scotty and D.
BCW Supplies. Protect, store, display.
Hey Web World, Scotty D. Thanks for stopping by to another episode of the Comic Book Curator. Do not adjust your computer. Yes, this is a little different in the way you have experienced content here on my channel in the past. And that's because I'm trying something new here, and I want your honest opinion. You see, if you know me and you followed my channel for any great length of time, you know that I spent a good portion of my professional career sitting in a room by myself, talking into a microphone, broadcasting out for millions of people to listen to. Yes, I was a radio broadcaster. So I thought to myself, I liked doing that. Radio is dead. You can't deny that. But people enjoy still consuming content in a very casual manner. So I thought to myself, hey, if I have nothing visually appealing to share with you, or I can't share something with you visually because of copyright restrictions or copyright limitations, why not produce content in the format of a podcast? It's amazing. You and I can hang out together wherever you're at. You could be in front of your computer right now, listening to this while you work on something else. You could take this on the go with you in a car while you commute, on a plane, in a train, on a boat. It doesn't matter where you're at. You can listen to podcasts casually wherever you're at and still enjoy them because you don't have to look at the screen. So I really want your honest opinion on what you think about me doing more podcast style content here on my channel. Comment below. If you're listening to this on the go, obviously be careful. I don't want you to be distracted. Just when you get a chance, comment below and let me know what you think about me doing more podcast style content when I don't have something visual to show you, or I can't show something to you visual. Just a thought, and that's what we're going to go through on this video. And if you looked at the title of this video, you know that I'm going to be comparing the Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics 4th edition against the Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics 5th edition. It's a comparison talk through, not a walk through. We're not walking. Well, maybe you're walking right now. I'm not. So I thought I would talk you through the differences between the 4th edition and the 5th edition to help you decide, do you want to spend your hard-earned money on this new guide? Okay. So for reasons of simplicity, I don't want to have to go through this whole content saying 4th edition, 5th edition, 4th edition, 5th edition. So from here going forward, I'm going to be referencing the 4th edition as V4 and the 5th edition as V5. V as in Victor. Okay, got it? Good. All right, so now we need to take a walk down memory lane. If you are new to the Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics, this will help you understand the history of this guide. If you are a veteran user of this guide, it's going to be kind of a refresher. Maybe you'll pick up something new on it as well. You see, we're on the 5th edition now, but the 1st edition was published back in 1994 per the Overstreet Guide website. Now, you could still buy the 1st edition Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics I don't know why you'd want to, unless you are just a fan of collecting old guides, but you can still buy the Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics first edition. It's listed on Amazon. In fact, I've got a link in the video description below that you can click on and buy it. Okay? Now, Amazon lists the published date as 1992. I don't know why. I'm going to stick with what the Overstreet publishers have said, that this was published in 1994. I didn't have this guide. I don't have this guide. But the important thing to understand about that date, whether it be 1992 or 1994, whatever Kool-Aid you want to drink, I'm going with 1994. That still predates CGC, PGX, Vault, Halo, CBCS. It predates every single third-party grading company out there. And why is that important to know? It's important to know because these third-party grading companies had to build a standard foundation by which they grade your comics and give you their opinion of the grade number that they're going to assign to your comic when you're paying your hard-earned dollar. It's my opinion that that foundation should and better be from the Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics, because this guide supersedes all of the third-party grading companies out there. Just my opinion. You're entitled to yours. But you see, there's only one of these third-party grading companies out there that comes out publicly and says that they are 100% Overstreet. That's awesome. The other ones, they don't tell you how the sausage is made. They're not going to let you peek behind the curtain and see how the magic pixie dust falls on your books. What they do is give you their grading notes. And if you look on their websites, they can say that multiple people may look at your book during the grading process. But that's pretty much it. That's a topic for another podcast. The second edition, published in 2003, 9 years after the first edition was published. And from what I can determine, what factored into that new edition, that second edition being published in 2003, was a change in the 10-point grading scale to half-point grades and whatnot. Now, I don't have the first edition. I don't have the second edition. So I don't really know what the differences are between those two guides. If you have them, comment below. Let me know. The third edition, published in 2006, 3 years after the second edition. Again, I don't own the third edition, so I'm not quite sure what warranted the new edition being published. If you happen to own the second and third edition of the Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics, and you have clearly done a page-by-page analysis and you can tell us what the differences are between the two editions, comment below. I know that I'd love to hear the differences, as well as I'm sure some others would too. In 2014, I became very intrigued with the entire concept of grading comic books, not from these third-party grading companies. You see, I've got this philosophy that comics should be enjoyed, not encapsulated. Now, I've done videos on products that allow you to protect your comics that look like a slab, that resemble a slab, but I can still get into those enclosures and read my comic at my discretion. Okay, so in 2014, the fourth edition was published. I bought that Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics, fourth edition. I read it from front cover to back cover multiple times to become very fluent, if you will, with grading comic books. Because I wanted to grade my collection. I wanted to know what condition my collection was in. I had some pretty key issues that are important to me that I just wanted to see where they would fall in the 10-point grading scale. And I'm not willing to pay somebody for their opinion to give me that. I've been collecting comics a long time. I've seen defects. I've seen destruction of a comic. I know what to look for. But this brought it home in a more formal status. That 4th edition guide that I bought, V4. Remember, I said I would call it V4. Now, that was 8 years between the 3rd and 4th edition. I'm not quite sure what the differences are between the 3rd edition and V4. If you own both of those and have done a thorough page-by-page analysis between version 3 and version 4 of the Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics, or the 3rd edition and 4th edition, comment below. I'd love to know what the differences are. We could capture these in a historical manner in the comments below. If you own every single one of these Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics, you can share your experience as each one of them became available to us, the collector. So, I was obviously intrigued in December, actually a little bit before December. I found out about the new guide in around the October timeframe, October 2016. I was browsing around and I found that Overstreet was publishing a brand new guide to grading comics, and that would be published in December. I held off immediately. I said, I'm not quite sure. But you know what? I'm into this whole self-grading my comics, so I want to get this new edition. Obviously, if they're publishing a new edition, there must be very important new information that they're sharing with us. Otherwise, why publish a new edition? It's only been 2 years since the 4th edition was published. So here's the talk through. I have done a page-by-page analysis, word-by-word analysis between the 4th edition and the 5th edition, V4 and V5. And here is my experience. The covers are very similar between the two, between V4 and V5. But one of the things I liked is a subtle reminder of the versions. You see, V4 has 4 comic covers shown on the cover. V5 has 5 comic book covers shown on the front of the Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics. Other than that, you really can't tell the differences between V4 and V5. I mean, they look so similar. There's nothing that stands out that says, this is the 4th edition or this is the 5th edition. So when you are looking at these online, looking at them at wherever you want to buy them, you can clearly see what version the book is by looking at the cover. The 4th edition has 4 comics on the cover of the guide, and the 5th edition has 5 comics on the cover of the guide. So, as I turned to the first pages and I started looking between the two, it's very similar. It's eerily similar as their ads. And while the previous version was a CBCS and a comic link ad, the new version, V5, has a CBCS and a CGC ad. And CBCS is obviously spending a lot on advertising in this guide as they continue, like in V4, with a full 2-page ad in V5 following those first 2 pages. And yet another ad before we get to the opening pages of the guide, in my opinion. And, I'm not, objectional to seeing advertisements in things like magazines. But when it's a guide, why are there so many ads? There were a lot of ads in V4. And that got underneath my skin. And I'm seeing a lot of similarities here in V5. The cast of writers, editors, and special advisors are exactly the same between V4 and V5. Now, I'm a little aggravated that on page 6, the quote, "Why a New Grading Guide," end quote, is word for word a copy from V4. It's very ambiguous. It doesn't provide the real why, like what has changed between the two versions, the two editions. They could have used this area to give a synopsis as to the differences that warranted the new version release, but they didn't. They simply published the same words that they used in V4. And the cast at Gemstone Publishing grew by one name in V5, with Braylon Bowersox as a staff writer, and Braylon is not listed in V4 as part of the Gemstone Publishing crew. In the table of contents, I immediately noticed the elimination of PGX and Vault from the third-party profile section of the book. I started scratching my head. I was like, is that a misprint? So I thought, well, I'll have to see when I get there. Other than that, the rest of the table of contents remains, guess what? The same. The next two ad pages are exactly the same between V4 and V5, followed by two new ads on the following pages. And the acknowledgement page 12, that's the page it's on, is very much the same with slightly different arrangements of text. But the one thing that stood out for me is the addition of a second to last paragraph promoting other Overstreet guides that you might want to pick up. Again, it's a hidden advertisement, in my humble opinion. They're really trying to push the other products. Or why would they have put that in the acknowledgements section? Things that make you go, The introduction of this V5 guide is word for word the same between V4 and V5, although they tried to make it seem fresh in V5 with the addition of a few small cover art images. There's an Action Comics #1 and a Superman 37. Pages 16 and 17 are similar between the versions as well, with an ad from Hawks Americana Collectibles. Hawks? I don't know how to pronounce this. Hakes. Never been there before, never done business with them before, so I don't know how to properly pronounce them. If you know the phonetical way to say this properly and I'm saying it wrong, I apologize. Simply comment below. I'll stand corrected. Not surprising that they have this Hawks Americana Collectibles, since it's a Geppy company. It's just refreshed for V5. Yet another ad, then the evolution of grading. And apparently nothing has evolved from V4 to V5 because all three pages are exactly the same between V4 and V5. What gives? Guess what's next? Another ad in the same place as the previous version. It's frustrating. In the using the 10-point grading scale, the only difference between V4 and V5 is the color used in the page title and the 10-point grading scale chart, as is the suggested number of allowable defects per grade and the diagram of a comic book. V4 was more purplish, lavender, whatever you want to call it. V5 is blue. Other than that, 4 pages of the same exact content, typed word for word between the books. I shake my head. I don't know what to tell you. They sold the same ad on page 27 for V4 as they had in V5 as they had for V4. Grasp that for a second. They sold the same ad on page 27 for V5 as they had for V4. Starting to see a lot of light bulbs popping up in your head right now. The grading definition pages, 4 total, are 100% the same except for the color used in the title and grading numbers. Again, V4 was purple, V5 is blue. This takes us to 2 more ads in V5, just like in V4. Fast forwarding through pages 34 through 49, which contain the contents of comic book restoration, how to describe a comic book, how to grade a comic book, grading odd format comic books, are 100% exact, including the pictures, except for the blue being used in the titles in V5 versus the purple that was used in V4. Unbelievable. Then, on page 50 of V5, the third-party profile page starts with CBCS like in V4. Now remember, the table of contents had an omission of a couple of companies out there. Guess what? It wasn't a typo. They're gone. CBCS, their mission statement has some additional information in V5, and they also used a different book example in V5. Superman 17 from 1942 versus the Amazing Spider-Man 2 from 1963 used in V4. CGC's profile is the same wording, but they used a new example in their new slab. Understand. I accepted that. The Silver Surfer 4 from 1969 versus Batman 1 from 1940 in V4. In the new slab style. I respected that. Halo's profile mission statement is half the size, and this is the company where they stay true to saying that they are Overstreet all the way. They also have 5 new book examples in their new slabs versus the 3 examples in V4. Starting on page 56 in V5, we read CGC, an overview of a comic book restoration. V5 is blue in color versus purple in V4, arguably the first real sign of updated information between V4 and V5 with some new definition titles in the CGC restoration grading scale. And the criteria has some, new information as well. I'll call it changed for some. 2 more ads in V5. Then we read CBCS Restoration Overview. Blue in V5, purple in V4. Again, some new samples and slightly different information from CBCS in this arena, but it's not earth-shattering. 7 more pages of ads follow promoting once again the new Overstreet products like collecting, movie, posters, cosplay. Yes, there is a guide to cosplay now. Video games, concert posters, horror. And then on page 69 is the same content that we experienced in V4. We're doing it all over again in V5, which is preservation and storage. The obvious blue versus purple seems to be the standard between the versions. Sadly, Other than that, all 4 pages have the same content in V5 as V4. Another same ad follows on page 73 of V5 that shows up in V4. Then starting on page 74 through 94, which contain comic book maintenance and preservation for archives and special collections, Pedigree comic books, the Lamont Larson collection, and When the Vault Was Open, the Don and Maggie Thompson Pedigree collection, Comic Book Ages, Defining Errors. Guess what? It's 100 the same between V4 and V5, down to the artwork used on the pages. Unbelievable. On page 95, we have a different ad from V4. And starting on page 96 through page 333, we get into the grade details and descriptions, just like in V4. Now, you're going to have to pay close attention with your reading in this area because there are subtle changes. And I'm talking about the size of a gnat's fart. There may be, in your opinion, additions in certain grade levels, while a majority of others stayed the same with no changes at all. For example, in 9.4 in V5 specifically discusses minor feathering, which this text does not appear in the description in V4. All of the examples used are 100% the same between V4 and V5, but that little piece that I just told you about, minor feathering. Starting on page 334 through 353, there are 2 samples of single books that range from grades 9.6 to 1.0. This again is, hold on to your seats a little bit, 100% the same between V4 and V5. Unbelievable! We arrive to the index now in this 5th edition guide, V5, on page 354, and the glossary on page 356. Again, 100% the same between editions. For obvious reasons, the advertising index on page 373 is different between V4 and V5, as is also the same for the directory listing on 374. The Overstreet advisors that start on page 376 will seem very familiar if you own V4. There's some new faces and names here, but the total number of advisors remains at 144 between V4 and V5. Then you think that we're done, but no, 6 more ads grace your eyeballs before you turn to the back cover of the guide. Unbelievable. Way too many ads in my opinion. Overall, my humble opinion, they didn't need to produce this book. It's far too much of the same old stuff repeated and reprinted from the 4th edition and not enough new compelling show-stopping grading information to warrant a new edition of this guide. But that's just my opinion. It's your hard-earned dollar. You decide if you want to go out and buy this guide, the 5th edition, published December 2016. I'd love to hear your comments below of this podcast and the review, the talk through, if you will, of the Overstreet Guide to Grading Comics V4 versus V5. Don't forget to click the like if you like this video. If you didn't like this video, I can't help you. You do have the option to click the dislike, although it makes no sense to me. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It's real simple. Takes about Guess what? Click. You could have been subscribed by now. If you already are subscribed to my channel, thank you so very much. I appreciate you being right there so I could be right here. And as always, comics should be enjoyed, not encapsulated. May the force be with you. We'll see you on the next video. Until then, we'll see you, Web World.